Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and joined once again by Stacey Frank, Executive Vice President of Elite Consulting Partners. What's going on?
Hey everybody, happy to be back as always.
Getting ready for a long weekend, long for the rest of the world. Not really, it's a normal weekend for me because I'll be working on Friday and some of Monday. But
yeah, I think me too.
You got a pickleball tournament tonight, so.
Tonight.
Yeah, so.
Big.
We got to be short
regional.
and sweet because she's got to get out of here to crush somebody in pickleball.
Well, we have to keep that competitive edge going.
You don't want to be complacent.
No.
Right. Interesting.
Right. Oh.
Complacency. We're going to talk about complacency tonight.
How about that? Pickleball and financial advisors. There's
not
a blend.
Being complacent. Right. Exactly. I'm going to go boxing in a little bit. So you definitely can't be complacent in the ring. You get your butt kicked.
No.
Anyway, so welcome to the show, everybody. As you may or may not know, if you're new to the show, these are not scripted presentations and conversations. They're just discussions, and that's why it's called Advisor Talk. Sort of welcoming you into the room. If you're not watching us on YouTube, you should check us out because then you'll see the room that we're talking about. But today we want to talk about complacency and what is complacency costing you. And I think that through some of our experiences, again, those of you that have listened to our show before, you know that all of our conversations are about what conversations we've had with clients over the last week or two. And today, we're going to really do an interesting comparison because earlier in the week, we had a conversation with a client, I'll just say at a wirehouse firm, Wirehouse A, and his view of the world was much different than the advisor I was just with, who was at another wirehouse type firm, and they both recognized the same thing about their firm, two different firms. They weren't at the same firms, but they both recognized that their firms weren't hurting them, meaning being at the firm wasn't doing damage to their business.
Right. When asked what their pain points are, they'll say, well, I don't really have any pain where I sit today.
Yeah. Well, they stopped doing this. They stopped doing that. I don't make those phone calls anymore because I don't need to talk to those people. So I don't have to deal with that anymore. Like it was almost like,
they don't bother me. My firm leaves me alone.
They leave me alone now kind of thing. Right. Which is odd.
It sounds complacent.
Well, right. But then the other guy is saying, well, I don't really call the service department anymore because I don't get the right answer. So I have to figure it out myself. And I just do my own thing, right? But advisor B is really recognized that, so why am if they're not helping me, right? At best, they're a neutral firm, right? But a neutral firm that you're paying to be there, right? And these, both of these advisors we're talking to them about going independent. So they're both multi-million-dollar teams. So their economics is pretty substantial. I mean, in terms of the economic pickup, right? One advisor is probably the difference between W-2 and 1099 independence is probably somewhere around $30,000 a month. So $360,000 a year, he's paying this firm, his firm,
for not hurting him.
For nothing, right? for not help, basically for not help, for basically leaving him alone, right?
Right. You're paying what they call that to be left alone.
Don't they call that extortion?
Possible.
Right? The guy comes to the front desk and you have to pay him cash in order for him to protect you and not trash your store. That's extortion. That's basically what this is like, right? They don't bother me. They leave me alone. And for that, I'm going to pay them $360,000.
60%.
Right.
60% of my revenue.
Versus the other guy, similar model, similar size, going independent. He was basically saying, for that kind of money, I could hire like 3 staff people and grow my business at 50 to 60%. Right. And so what we're saying here is basically how much is complacency costing you that you may not realize. So we're in the car and we were talking about successful advisors. And these guys were both successful, right? Like all of the advisors we work with. And the one of the excuses that we hear when someone is complacent is, well, I got a lot of business going on. I'm bringing in a lot of assets, right? So it's just not the right time. And we started asking ourselves, so with successful advisors, wouldn't you always be bringing in a lot of assets, right? If you're successful, you'll probably always be bringing in assets. I can't imagine an advisor saying, you know what, right now, business really sucks, right? I just lost my assistant, so I can't bring in a lot of assets. You know what, now is the time to move.
Yeah, and that's the hard part about any milestone event, really. And we equate, moving your practice or making a change as a milestone event. There will never be the perfect time. And so if your firm isn't helping you and you're saying, well, they're not hurting me, then you're kind of in complacent mode.
I would actually tell you that they are hurting you because they're not helping you grow. And if the competitors around you are all growing because they're at firms that are helping them grow, whether it's through marketing, social media, programs, services, whatever those things are that various firms offer, then they are hurting you because you are not advancing your business the way you should. And so they are hurting you. And it's frustrating. That's why I think I'm a little bit passionate about this, because I get frustrated when, so this one advisor you were talking to, when we first started talking to him, he was basically not happy with his firm.
Yeah, for years.
Right.
And by the way, this keeps coming back. It's not like, this advisor started this process 3 or 4 years ago. That's how long it's been. Because now here we are years later and it's still the same things. Well, there's nothing wrong, but they're not helping me right now. It's the same conversation that keeps coming back.
So if I can, I'm going to go on a limb here and I'm going to use an analogy, and I'm not to discount the severity of what I'm going to say here, but I'm using the analogy because this is a serious topic. Because I see it all too often. And it never changes. It never changes. It's just temporary. And it's like a married couple, unfortunately, where the husband is abusing the wife, but then says, oh, I love you, honey. I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. Blah, right? Like that happens, right? And the wife says, oh, okay, sorry. You got it. And maybe it's good for a few months. And then it happens again. And then it's, oh, I'm sorry. Love you. Okay. And it's a cycle that unfortunately, and it's terrible.
Cycle of behavior.
It's a cycle of behavior, right? You have a master's degree in psychology, so you know this.
History repeats itself over and over again. It's really no different because your relationship with your family or your spouse is the exact same type of quote unquote marriage as you have with your firm. And so unless that firm out of nowhere changes drastically, which in the traditional wirehouse world, there really isn't going to be much change. It's pretty much the same year after year, and we see advisors come back to us with the same thing over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day.
It's hard for us to hear because we take good notes, right? And so we're like, well, wait a minute. 6 months ago, you said this was a problem and you couldn't stand this and you couldn't stand your manager and because they gave you some BDA money, all of a sudden now you're going to be happy for a little while. Like they're just buying your complacency. And we're not picking on any firm. Like this isn't a shot at any firm.
It's the environment in general.
It's the environment in general that where you're at, right? I have another client of mine that's leaving an RIA because he's feeling this kind of behavior, and I'm proud of him because he's a little bit of a younger guy, still does a good amount of revenue, but he recognized this isn't going to change. This is like the fifth time he's, I say he, the owner of this RIA, like the fifth time he's done this, and I'm not going to go through it again.
Yeah, and these advisors that we keep paralleling, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was the same complaint, maybe something slightly different. I lost my assistant and they didn't replace them, or they cut my comp, they swore to never do it again, and here I am 3 to 5 years later, and I lost my assistant again. They're not replacing him or her.
And I can't hire someone.
And I can't hire somebody. And, the comp plan's coming out later this year, and I don't know what it's going to be.
Well, okay. But he literally said he's expecting it to be another negative change. So it's like, well, wait a minute. Why are you at the firm then? If you are expecting bad shit to happen, sorry, I'm going to curse. I don't really care. But if that's the relationship that you have with your firm, that you're expecting bad stuff to happen, you should not be there.
Right.
I'm telling you, you shouldn't be there. You can throw a dart at, let's just say you're at a wirehouse firm and you are at a firm, and I'm not going to talk badly about any different firm, but there are options for you. Okay. There are firms that do things really well. Now, I would say use us to help you because we can identify what's, I use the old saying, like, is it real or Memorex, right? And that's sort of dating us a little bit. For those of you that are listening that don't know what Memorex is, it's like beta tapes, right? VHS and beta gives my age away a little bit. Yeah. But, we can tell you what's going to be consistent at other firms. Like you might be having a problem at your firm and we'll tell you, well, you're probably going to get the same thing at the other firm, right? Because it's a wirehouse institutionalized problem, right?
Well, that's the thing, is that they're these more, W-2 wirehouse traditional firms that are driven by bank objectives and obligations
and fear.
They're filling those needs. They're filling their P&L, not yours. So the lack of control that you have is probably causing that fear and complacency. So we just caution you to just be aware, have awareness that, they leave you alone, but are they hindering your growth, making you fear leaving? Because that's the goal.
Right.
It's an institutionalized mindset.
Well, the other thing that I heard, which is, is there complacency that you have by design from the firm? What do you mean? Meaning that they are lulling you. Again, if you're watching me on video, you'll see what I'm doing with my hand. Lulling you to complacency so that they can do things around you to create a bigger bond between your client and the firm. We got on this conversation at the meeting about prior to 2008 and 2009, there were a lot of clients that were really tied to or had more loyalty to the firms than the financial advisor. Right? So that's why back then, if an advisor moved, the percentage of assets that moved was lower than it is today, right? It was 65% or something like that, 70%. Now it's like 85 to 90%. The reason that is because after 2008 and 2009, when basically the banks blew everybody up, right? They lost all the trust and faith from investors, and the investors' clients realized that it was the relationship with a financial advisor that was the most important thing, which we all believe is the case, right? What some of these firms are doing is they are putting a wedge in between the financial advisor and the client. And you may not even know it's happening. And so in this one instance, and again, I'm not going to name the firm, but the firm is no longer allowing advisors to even use Facebook as a means of branding, general branding, right? And they make the case like it's some SEC or FINRA issue when it's not, because just about every other firm does it, and every independent firm allows something as simple as using Facebook. Because if you're going into the retiree market, which all financial service firms are going after, that's the medium that they're on, right? They're like a retired 70-year-old couple is not on LinkedIn, right? Like they're not looking at
Facebook.
They're not looking at their grandkids on LinkedIn because their grandkids aren't posting pictures of them at the baseball game on LinkedIn. They're on Facebook, okay? But the reason why this firm is doing this is because they are trying to prevent the clients from having that personal bond with a financial advisor, because that's why clients move firms and that's why clients work with financial advisors, not because this guy's smarter than that woman.
Right? How many times, and I think we just heard it a couple times this week, has an advisor said to us, and we almost feel bad. My clients are saying, gosh, am I glad that you're with XYZ firm. That brand really means a lot to me. It's so important to me. If I was the financial advisor, I would feel betrayed.
Yeah.
I would feel like, no, I'm doing all the work for you. I've attended your kids' weddings and college graduations. And then in turn saying, my clients feel so strongly and so proud to be with me because of the firm backing.
Yeah,
like
you're
that's
doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong.
Doing something wrong.
Like you're really hurting your business long term, and you're basically playing into what the firm wants you to do, and that's really dangerous. You might think it isn't, but it really is.
It's brainwashing in a way.
Right. Yeah.
Those relationships are yours.
Because that's where when they have that relationship, then they can start making changes. Like years ago, like when the banks and firms had those relationships, they would just make changes, like just make changes to comp plans and fees and all this other stuff, a lot more than they do today, because they perceive to have more control. And that's what they're trying to get back to, because they're realizing, especially in the wire W-2 world, where they're seeing, whether they believe it or not, they're seeing advisor headcount and asset flow go to the independent space, and they don't know how to address it. And the only way they know how to address it is basically essentially circle the wagons around clients as best that they can. That's why firms want you to use all types of sticky products, like credit cards and mortgages and, alternative products, which are good. I'm not saying that they're not good and you shouldn't be working with those things.
No, but it's harder to unwind.
But be mindful of that stuff. You're playing right into their game, and the more control they have, and we talked about on the independent side how they're trying to gain a little bit of control, but it's a little bit different. This is control over your clients because they in their mind they own your clients. They're not your clients, and so just again, we're going on this little tear, but if you're a successful business owner, practitioner, I'll say a practitioner, which means basically you're not independent yet, but you're a practitioner. It's not that hard to move anymore. I'm not saying there isn't work to do, right? And maybe you talk to your buddy of yours that's in the next office over, and he moved like 18 years ago and it was a disaster and he's got horror stories and all this other stuff. It's not like that anymore. Where I was at yesterday, again, I was at LPL yesterday, if you watch my Instagram account. And, the stats, we just had a client move, what I'm talking about, a multi-million-dollar team, and they moved about 45 days ago, and they have 100% of their assets moved. 100%
coming from
of a multi-million-dollar team coming from I'll just call it a wirehouse firm. Let's just leave it at that. A wirehouse independent firm. But 100%. And the stat that LPL actually has, and many other independent firms have similar stats, but this is the only one I can quote, is that after 6 months of that advisor transitioning over to LPL, they're at 106% of their onboarded assets, meaning the day before what they had at the other firm, 106%.
And so why do you think that is? And this is sort of a trick question. Why do you think there was that much retention? Because of?
Well, I don't know if you're going to write the right answer, but I think, and what I said to them is, because a lot of times, if you're at a wirehouse firm of one of these major banks, a lot of times your clients don't want to give you all of the assets because of where you're at, right? They really like you. They don't really like the bank. And I say bank, I mean the financial institution, right? Because they're not all banks. And then when you make the move, it's all about you, and it gives you the opportunity to tell them, hey, listen, Mrs. Jones, while we're moving your accounts, and I'm just saying names, okay? While we're moving the accounts over from Wells Fargo, I know you weren't happy with your Merrill Lynch advisor. Why don't we roll that over in at the same time? And they do it. When I moved my practice, this was years ago. I only had a small book of business, but I brought in a couple $1 million of new assets from my existing clients, because at the time I was at Prudential Securities, and I literally had some clients say to me, "Well, Frank, I really didn't like Prudential Securities, but I liked you, so that was why I was there. But I didn't really want to give you all my assets.
Right,
so now that you're
fear
at
of
Smith Barney,
overconcentration.
well, but just they didn't like the firm. I mean, I hate to pick on, but look at a firm like Wells Fargo, and I think maybe there's things getting better there. But you think about how much negative press they've had over the years, right? Clients don't like that stuff.
And that's hard to disprove. That's hard to unwind, that thought about that.
Right. And so what I told this one gentleman, that he said, you have clients that are maybe not telling you that why they're not giving you all their assets, but that's probably the reason, right? Because if they're giving you, if you have a client that's got $20 million and he gives you $2 million, okay, he likes you, but maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable with the firm that you're at. And that's what we see over and over and over again.
Right. And how many times have we seen advisors have those conversations of change? Hey, I'm going to make a change, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, to another firm, and them win more business or get more referrals because you're having a different type of conversation with your client than you've ever had to before.
Right.
So it's hugely opportunistic.
Well, he was asking me about like, how do I position the conversation with my client? And he was like, basically saying, do I go negative on my client, on my old firm? I said, don't do that. If you're moving firms, do not throw your old firm under the bus, right? You can say things about, you want to improve your services, you want to improve your communication, you want to improve the back office response times. Like you can say those things, make the conversation a positive conversation about them, right? You're making the move because of X, Y, and Z reasons, because you value them as a client and you want to increase the service level, blah, 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 right?
Right, with no restrictions. You don't want to have any inhibitions to what you can do for them. A more
Right.
open architecture platform, whatever.
And again, make it about them. And when you do that, it gives you the open opportunity to ask for more business. Or in this case, this one gentleman had, he had some clients that were business owners that had decent sized businesses, and he never really talked about succession planning and the sort of the M&A side on the small business side. And LPL has a model that they can do that, right? And I said, you should just tuck that comment into the conversation about, hey, Bob, just as an example, I know you have a business. One of the reasons why I made a move is so I can service clients like you that have small businesses that are looking to sell sometime down the road. I now have the ability to provide those services to you. That is your opportunity to sort of give them a menu of new things that you can do. I did the same thing. I can do mortgages now. I did all of that stuff. But at the time, that was like a new thing, right? I have a checking account you can now offer. So I did those things. Again, I'm sort of contradicting myself, but this was 20-something years ago. So it's a different world now. Anyway, our point is, I think, don't let complacency hurt you. Don't think just because your firm isn't hurting you, you shouldn't be looking around and there isn't a better opportunity to help take your business to another level. I mean, we've moved a lot of people. And over the years, I've moved many, 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 many people. I can probably count on one hand, and probably even less than that, how many times I've moved an advisor to a new firm where their business didn't grow exponentially because of the move and being in a better position.
Exactly. We're not going to let an advisor make a change for the worse. I mean,
right.
Our guidance, our experiences are nationwide, obviously. But we're not going to make a suggestion or consult with an advisor on something that's going to be detrimental. Or we're going to bring you out of complacency with a lot of confidence. I think that's the answer. So when we see advisors that we've worked with for years kind of succumb to that because that's what they're being told from their institution, it's disheartening sometimes.
Yeah, it's even harder when you hear an advisor talk about how they want to grow their business and where they want to go with it, and we know in our guts that they're just not at the right firm to do that. So anyway, that's our
rant.
Our rant on that today. A little bit passionate about this, but we love what we do, and we just want to make sure that advisors are getting the right advice and guidance. And look, there's times I had an advisor call me. He was the G2 on a team, and they were doing a deal where the senior was selling the book essentially to the firm, right? And then after 7 years, I believe it was, So the G2 gets paid a 30% payout for running the practice, right? But then after 7 years or 9 years, that book goes to the G2 for not for nothing, but like for nothing, right? And then his payout goes up to the normal payout. And I said to this because he was like, well, should I leave and what should I do? I said, hey, listen, you need to take that deal. I was like, that's a pretty good deal. Like, you're basically getting a book that the firm is using their money to buy for you. And you're getting a 30% payout, because even if you went independent on your own, maybe you're at your level, maybe you're going to get a 50 net 50% payout net. So you're at 30 and you're going to pick up in a number of years like a multi-million-dollar practice. You need to
take it and run.
Take it. I basically said take it and run. Right. Sign the form as soon as you can before they change their mind. But that's what we do. It's about being honest about the situation that you're in. So anyway, if you want to have one of those honest conversations, the best thing for you to do is to call Stacey at
856-816-6322 or Stacey at EliteConsultingPartners.com. Don't forget the E. Or you can reach Frank.
Or you can call me at 856-316-4651 or email me at frank@eliteconsultingpartners.com, and then I will have you talk to Stacey.
Tag team. Cheers.
You want to talk to the best, so that's the best.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We have a pretty good team.
Anyway, thanks for listening. If you thought this was useful, don't forget to share this with people that maybe haven't heard it, or you think you have a friend of yours that's in this situation. Send it to them. We don't advertise. We have firms that want to advertise on here. We're not doing that because I just want this to be raw and just for us as advisors in the industry. So we hope you enjoyed it, and have a great holiday weekend.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to EliteConsultingPartners.com/podcasts.